Welcome to a special edition of My Life. Now you might know Elgin Nichols from Minutes by Minute on our station, or perhaps the Oxford News, or high school tennis, or various promotional videos that he's very professionally put together for us. I know him as the guy who taught me how to turn a television camera on and off for the first time in 40-some years. But in addition to that, you might not know that Elgin Nichols is also very much involved in the Oxford community. How many committees are you on these days, Elgin?
Well, I'm trying to make it fewer and fewer. I'm on the village council, of course, and serve on the zoning board of appeals, for the village.
Right.
Was on the planning commission at one time.
But you've been very involved in the community in the relatively short time that you've lived here. You've lived here 2 or 3 years?
Been here just about 3 years.
Okay.
Originally got involved with the Oxford Lakes subdivision organization. It seems they needed a tennis court repaired at the time, and one of my backgrounds, of course, a licensed contractor. And I've worked on tennis courts before, so guess who volunteered? So one summer.
Well, we'll talk more about your other avenues to success as we continue. But let's go back to where you were born. What city were you born in?
I was born in Whittemore, Michigan.
And tell me a little bit about your mother and father. What did they do?
Well, they owned a farm up in the Whittemore area, Prescott area. And he had my father roughly about 800 acres of land, which he said could grow 2 things, children and sandburrs. And he had lots of kids. We had 7 children, and mom and dad, so there's 9 of us.
So I gather you spent a lot of your time working on the farm.
I was a little shaver at that time, and I can recall bringing in wood, that was chopped, for the fire. That was pretty much my job, and I can recall churning butter, for my mother as a little fella.
It kind of sounds like they got rid of the farm after a period of time, or?
My father became ill. Later to find out that he had cancer. And I was about 7 years old at the time, 6 years old when we left the farm. And we moved to a town called Burt, which is close to Birch Run. You folks that travel I-75 have probably heard of it. And we lived there. I graduated from high school at Birch Run High School. My father passed away when I was 8 years old.
So you were living in Burt at the time?
In Burt.
Okay. So was it kind of a struggle for a mother to raise all those children on her own after that?
Well, it was kind of almost like 3 different divisions of a family. My older brother was 2 years older than me, and then my sister in between, she was she was on the tail end. There's myself and then my little sister. So there's 3 of us that my mother had to raise. The others were out of the home. One of my brothers was serving in the Air Force in Korea. Another one of my brothers was working at General Motors, and another one was also working at a GM plant. And my sister, of course, was married to a gentleman who had just gotten out of the Navy.
So you actually started school after you moved to Burt, is that correct?
No, I started in Whittemore.
Okay.
Originally as a little guy. Don't remember a whole lot of it. But originally then, after we moved, my dad purchased a farm in Burt. He only lived another year or so after he had purchased the farm. I did go through the Burt School, which by the way is closed now, and I didn't have anything to do with that.
Okay, but now, so your father purchased another farm in Burt despite the fact that he was ill at the time.
Right.
Did you, I imagine you had to pitch in to keep that going, didn't you?
Well, I can recall at 7, 8 years old driving the tractor, plowing, and my brother, of course, he did the same. My dad didn't have any reservations about us, doing that kind of thing.
When he passed away, did you guys have to help carry on with the farming and everything?
Actually, my mother gave up the farming portion of it. She took on a secondary job. We pretty much took care of ourselves as kids. It's not like today where children are demanding your full attention. We pretty much found things to do. I started to sell seeds in order to make money, the correspondence seeds business. Went door to door and, Mister, you don't want any seeds, do you?
How old were you when you were doing that?
Oh, I was probably about 7 at the time.
Really?
Maybe 8.
What do you remember about the elementary school that you went to in Burt?
Well, I do remember that I had a very, very good teacher in the 3rd grade. I wasn't much of a reader, and I wasn't really interested in books as such. And she called me to her desk one day and she said, "I have this book I'd like you to read, Elgin." I said, "What is it?" And she said, "It's by Zane Grey. It's Western." And I said, "Okay." So I took the book and I got so enthralled with it, I read the whole thing that night. And came back, brought the book back, and I said, "Here's the book." And she said, "Well, have you read it?" And I said, "Yes." I said, "May I have another one?" She said, "Yes." So that got me started in the reading thing and improved my grades a great deal.
You did exactly what she wanted you to do, in other words.
I think so. She was a very smart lady.
Was this a very large school?
I think in our lower grades we had maybe 8 to 10 students, very small. It was like a 3-room school.
3-room schoolhouse. And did you live in Burt through the rest of your school career?
I did. Graduated from Burt Run High School, and we did live in Burt then. And right after high school, I joined the U.S. Air Force and spent 4 years active in the service. There's a little thing going on called Vietnam, which I got involved in some of the things that, you know. I worked at a Minuteman missile, which of course site in North Dakota is one of them.
Okay.
Top clearance.
Okay, now you're a family man yourself. Where in all of this did you meet your wife?
I met my wife when she was 15 years old.
While you were in school?
While I was in school. I was up north and I was working in Prescott. My brother owned a store in Prescott called Chips and Nichols IGA. And I got a job with my cousins working in the hayfield. I was just a little skinny guy, so went out there. I thought, well, that would help me out. Well, I couldn't even lift a bale of hay to start with, but by the end of the summer, I could throw them over the wagon. And so we went to the fair, in Standish Fair, and had a little time off with my cousins, and lo and behold, I saw this cute little girl walking down the fairway, and went up to introduce myself and got talking, one thing to another. Eventually, we got married. 15 years old. We've been married now 50 years.
Wow, congratulations.
Thank you.
Okay, so you got
It's all her
married
fault,
in,
you know.
Yeah, right. So did you go into the Air Force immediately after high school?
I did, 1961.
And of course, in those days, if you know, with Vietnam and everything, there was concern about the draft and whatnot. Where were you stationed while you were in the
I
in the Air
joined,
Force?
and of course we went through training down in Lackland. I went through a training program that they had for logistics, which that's how I ended up at the Strategic Air Command Base in North Dakota, ordering jet parts, that kind of thing, and putting the orders together, that kind of thing. Involved with missile parts, engine parts, that kind of thing. Got transferred to Air Defense Command, which was in Otis Air Base, and that's in Massachusetts, about 10 miles from Hyannisport. I met some interesting people along the way. I met Jack Kennedy once up in North Dakota, shook hands with him when he was coming through. And of course, Hyannisport is where his main location was at, and his home.
We have to take a little break.
Okay.
But we're going to hold that thought because we're going to be right back.
Very good.
Hi everybody, I'm Terry Stiles.
Hi everybody, I'm Bill Service, and I'm the producer of Our Community Access. Terry and I started our show 8 years ago to bring our community into your living rooms.
Our Community Access is a show born from the rich diversity of our community, and we want to brag about it and the people creating that diversity.
Over the year, we've been from fox hunts to beekeeping and right in your own backyard.
We welcome new businesses, chamber fashion, senior hobbies, class reunions, and much, much more.
We've covered all our celebrations from Leonard Strawberry Festival to our premier Lone Ranger Parade.
But there's still more avenues that we plan on going on.
So watch our Community Access at 9:30 and 5:30 every day, and you have a great, great week.
Now, back here with Elgin Nichols. Elgin, you were telling us about meeting the Kennedy family. Could you enlighten me a little bit more on that, please? The circumstances and how that came to be?
Well, of course, up in North Dakota, we were involved with the Bay of Pigs situation, in Cuba, and what was going on there. We were on standby a lot. Jack Kennedy came up there, to review the facility, and very cordial. I mean, he would cut loose from his entourage and come directly to the service people, shake hands.
And where was this again?
This was in North Dakota, Grand
Okay,
Forks.
right.
But then when I was transferred to the Air Defense Command at Otis Air Base in Massachusetts, I was on flight duty quite often in a platoon to greet the president when he came in. So I would see Air Force One fly in often, quite often. I'd see the Kennedys, Jacqueline Kennedy, and of course the little ones with them. And they had a limousine waiting, of course, right off the ramp as you come off the plane. So saw them quite often. They were a common presence
Sure.
in Hyannisport and in that area.
Now, you were married all during this time, weren't you?
I was married in 1964. My wife and I got married while I
Okay.
was at Otis Air Base.
Okay, so you were married while you were in the service, but as you said before, you had met your wife while you were in high school.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so okay, so take me through the chain of events. When did you get out of the Air Force?
Got out of the Air Force in 1965, the end of it. Served 2 years, of course, in active duty. As soon as I got out, they were looking for people that had computer training, and I had transitioned into the computer area with a high-grade classification.
And computers were a lot different then than they are now, aren't they?
Were they ever? We learned originally on a RAMAC system. For those of you that don't know, it's Random Access Method Program hardware and by IBM, and it was the first computer that they ever developed. And it was used for statistics purposes, for taking census. And but we modified it or used it for purchasing parts and keeping track of various aircraft and so forth in the area. It ran on vacuum tubes. So every time there was a lightning storm, we would see the technicians run in with tube caddies, pulling tubes out, putting them in, trying to get this thing up and running. So interesting era. And then that changed to RAMAC. Remington ran UNIVAC, which will allow you people that are younger, probably never heard of it, but it was a big thing back then. And it was more what they call a hybrid system, combination tubes and transistor system. Not so much all solid state as you folks know today.
Now, tell me, what was your first career after the Air Force?
My first career, because of my training in the Air Force, I got out and they were looking for people trained in computers. All over, and I put my application into General Motors up north in Saginaw, and also Dow Corning Corporation. Both companies called me to be hired within a day or two. So I was only out of the service for less than 4 or 5 days, and I decided then to go to work for Dow Corning as a smaller company. So that's what I did. I ended up starting as a computer operator there, and a few years later I had worked my way up to a computer design analyst with Dow Corning. I designed their networks and their computers.
And by this time you were probably starting to build a family, weren't you?
I was, and the thing is, I felt that I was kind of at the end of my career at that time, and so I thought, well, where am I going to go from here? And being young, 30 years old or so, and I'm thinking my life is almost over because I'm at the peak, which I wasn't, but very ambitious. And I said, well, I think maybe I want to go in business for myself. The thing is, about the same time, they said, we're going to offer you a job in New York, as a sales rep. I said, what's a computer person going to be a sales rep?
Yeah.
I said, I don't understand that part of it. I don't ever think I'll be a salesperson. And but anyway, as it turned out, I went into my own business. I built the first building by scratch, and originally I wanted to get into the service part of electronics. And I had a company approach me, which was Hot Point Corporation. I said, look, you need to be selling this product as well. Build a store large enough so you can have a retail business. And my wife sat in on those initial meetings. It wasn't any intention for me to actually be in the business working, but outside of the business providing support for the business. Brand new operation, of course, is very expensive to start up as a rule. We did this fairly inexpensively.
So you went right from Dow Corning into having your own business.
I did.
You opened a store, is that correct?
I opened a store, built the store.
How did you pull that off?
A lot of good people involved, a lot of friends.
And what city was that in?
This is in a small town called Linwood. It's in Cucaulin Township,
Right.
Which is part of Bay County. And it was on US 23, which is a highly traveled road. And of course, people would come up to me, "What are you thinking?" I don't know. But anyway, I figure, well, I told God, I said, I'll do all the work if you do all the worrying.
Well, for those of us who travel down 23 or up 23 on our way up north through Linwood, what were you close to out there?
Well, actually closer to Bay City. We're kind of in between Linwood and Pinconning.
Okay.
Eventually we had a store in Pinconning and one up in Standish as well. And had the Bay City store that we purchased from another guy. Built a new location in Saginaw. So
Over how many years did this take place?
it took probably about 20-25 years to do all this. At one point, in terms of volume, we were doing close to $5 million a year, you know, for back in those days. We had quite a staff of people working in our operation. I think salespeople alone, I had something like 12 or 14 salespeople, plus a service department of 8 to 12 people. Lots of vehicles, you know, doing service work, you know, for us, because I had my own service company as well.
Now, as if that wasn't enough, you also started a production studio during all this, didn't you? When did that come into play?
Crazy people do crazy things, you know. So anyway, what happened is I was paying all this money going out for advertising purposes, and we had established a budget somewhere around $100,000 a year for our company, you know, for television advertising.
And that was real money back then.
It was real money back. It was real money now even. But the thought came to myself and another person I was working with that, you know, why not have a production company where we can write the commercials, do all the production work, and present the finished product, you know, to the station. So we had meetings with the Channel 5, Channel 12, and others. They said, look, if you have your own studio, we will give you, as a production company, 20% off your expenses. So that was a pretty good chunk of change, you know, so it wouldn't be long before we could make that up. I was fortunate to get a gentleman, his name is John Colhut, very, very talented. He was my executive director and editor. I had two other people too, one was a camera person, one was a writer, and I did a lot of the writing. We had picked up other accounts from various businesses in the area. We had an automobile dealership. We had a tax consulting business. EDS Corporation, we had them. Dow Corning, we did work for them as well. And a company called Morley Brothers in Saginaw. So we had some pretty good accounts that we were working with.
We're going to take a break right now, but we'll be right back.
Hello, I'm Elgin Nichols.
And I'm Dave Kenny.
And together, Dave and I host a program called Minutes by Minute. We discuss what local Oxford and Addison politicians and appointed representatives are doing to make your life happy or miserable by passing laws, ordinances, and regulations that affect you.
We believe that within those political decisions is humor. You just have to hunt for it. For example, did you know there's a local ordinance that allows people to shoot off fireworks 24 hours a day, 365 days a year? But since they can do it, nobody wants to do it.
Catch us Monday through Friday on Charter 191 and ATT Uverse 99, scheduled for 7 a.m., 11 a.m., and 10:30 p.m., or go to our webpage, OCtv.org, and click on Programs. I'm Elgin Nichols.
And I'm Dave Kenny. Each week, catch us on Minutes by Minute.
Don't miss it.
I guess we should have brought up your wife and her part in this story as well. You want to add something about her?
Well, I would like to add a lot because she was partnership in this thing. I mean, really smart young lady.
She wasn't exactly a stay-at-home mom, right?
No, although we had 3 children.
So. But you could bring them to the store.
Yeah. But she handled the accounting portion of it. She did help with the training in terms of, you know, the secretarial people that we had and accounting people in the background. Big responsibility.
Yes.
And she had to keep track of me, which was hard.
Okay, so give me a blow-by-blow description of what happened through those years with your various businesses.
Actually,
and what brought you here to Oxford?
Well, at some point, we had felt, of course, the blunt of the economy. We could see the handwriting on the wall as to what was going to happen in the future.
You're talking about the big meltdown?
Big meltdown,
Okay.
2008.
Yep.
And I could project that, we're going to have some serious issues down the line. I mean, I was spending money like it was burning money in fire. So it wasn't going to continue to do that. So it was a time for us to think about retirement. I looked in a mirror and I said, holy smokes, this guy is almost 70 years old. It's time to think of other things. Well, as soon as our kids found out about this, I have a son who lives in Auburn, and I have another son that lives in Bay City, actually in Essexville. He's an attorney there, and the other one works for Dow Corning in the labs area.
Dow Corning?
Dow Corning, yeah, so it starts again. And they both love their jobs. My son, of course, has his own practice. My daughter married a gentleman down here in Oxford, and I'd never heard of Oxford. Didn't know where it was at. I always thought Oxford was flat land, but no. Lots of hills here, a lot more so than what we had in Bay City. But anyway, so there's a kind of a run for where's mom and dad going to live, And my sister-in-law and brother-in-law said, well, you need to move to West Branch. This is where we are, we'd like to have you close to us. My daughter says, no, you got to move down here. Well, it's getting torn all directions. And my daughter called us just before Christmas. She says, I found a home. I'm in Oxford Lake area. And she says, you got to see this house. It won't last long. So we packed up day before Christmas, came down here, checked out the house, made an offer on it, and bingo, they accepted it.
So this was 3 years ago?
This is 3 years ago.
Okay, what led you here to Oxford Community Television?
God.
Well,
Actually,
we could all say that.
It's true, though. I had no idea that if you would have told me 10 years ago I would be in Oxford doing this, I would not believe it whatsoever.
I think there's a few of us here who could raise our hands to that same sort of thing.
Right. Actually, it happened through accident, I think. I had heard that there was an opening on the ZBA board, so I went into the village office and told them I would be interested in it because I did participate in local politics in the Bay County area. I served on the zoning board and some other things, the planning commission and so forth. And so I had that experience. I thought maybe I could provide some input, in this village. Well, Joe Young felt the same way. So they put me on the zoning board to start with. Got to know Joe Boland, which, by the way, is a terrific individual. Nice guy and very knowledgeable. One of the first people I got to know. And then from there, they were looking for somebody on the planning commission for Oxford Village. So I said, okay, why not? So I went and I applied for that job, and bingo, I landed the job. Fantastic pay, by the way. It's actually free, voluntary.
One of the things that amazes me about your life is what you know about your ancestors. And we've already talked about your mother and father, but you can actually go back to your great-great-grandparents and before.
Yeah.
Can you enlighten us a little bit about, let's start with your grandparents and then go back from there. Did your grandparents, were they born in this country?
My grandfather was born in this country, but his father was not. My grandfather owned roughly about 2,000 acres up in the Whittemore Prescott area. And I have, as a matter of fact, a picture of him right here.
Yes, I don't know if you can get a shot of this.
Okay, let me just bring it around here if they can see this or not.
Might be a little bit of a reflection there with the glass, I don't know.
This is my grandfather here, and he was quite an individual. He had beehives, that kind of thing, for honey, and he had sheep and cattle and pretty good sized spread. My grandmother here, my aunt here, and this is my father. As a matter of fact, my father is a dead ringer for one of my grandsons, interesting enough. And what happened back in those days, of course, if you're the oldest child, you inherit the property, because I'm from an strong Irish background, descendant. And what they would do is you inherit all the property that your father had. And so my father, who was not the oldest son, would not have inherited anything. So my grandfather, in his smart move, sold some land to my father at a very good price. And so in a way, he did inherit, some of the property. But before that, my grandfather's father, he came from out in the Thumb area. And before that, he settled there. He actually had settled in Canada.
This is your great-grandfather?
My great-grandfather, yep.
Okay.
And he had actually settled in Canada. I believe this is his picture here, which I don't know if you can see that, but that's a prize
This
horse
is your
that he had.
great-grandfather
My great-grandfather
and grandmother, is that right?
Yes, that's correct. Great-great-grandfather.
My goodness, I wonder what year this would have been.
I am not sure if it's on the back or not. He was born in 1840, it says. So,
Late 1800s, probably.
yeah, late 1800s.
Wow, that's just amazing. And he was a farmer as well?
He was a farmer as well.
He was the first one to come to Michigan, is that right? Your great-great-grandfather?
Yeah, he would be the first one to come to Michigan. Yes.
And he bought a farm in
In the Thumb area.
the Thumb area.
And now, before that, his father did come from Ireland, County Tyrone, Ireland, which is in Northern Ireland. And I don't know if you folks out there know that Ireland actually split between, actually, it's two countries.
Right.
Okay. You got the United Kingdom, there's Northern Ireland, and trying to think of the capital. I know Belfast is the capital of...
Is Dublin the other?
Yeah, Dublin is the other one.
Okay,
Yeah, Dublin is the capital of the United Kingdom, Northern Ireland.
right.
And then you have the United Republic
Okay, and they were from which one?
from Northern Ireland.
Northern Ireland. What about on your mother's side? What nationality there?
Scott.
Scotch.
Her name was Linton, Linton.
Okay.
Interesting enough, Bill Dunn's, one of his relatives' name is Linton.
Is that right?
Yeah, as we were talking about one day.
Now, how far
Supervisor.
back can you go on your mother's side?
All the way back to Scotland. Actually, she's related, according to the archives, to the Livingston family. Dr. David Livingston out of Scotland.
Mr. Livingston, I presume.
Yes, that one.
That's fascinating.
And one of the people that did this research, and as you saw, I have a briefcase full of
Yeah.
information about history, was an aunt on my mother's side way back, and she was a school teacher in Saginaw. One day she showed up at one of my stores, and I was there, and she said, I'm related to you, and I can prove it. And so she brought out all this information on both sides of the family. And she was actually invited by the Livingston family to live at the castle for a week, which she did take them up on it.
Wow.
So, interesting stuff.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing this with us, Elgin. I'm happy to be your friend. I'm glad that you're working for our station. We value your expertise, and I'm glad you showed up for this program.
Glad to do it, John.
My pleasure. Have a good day, and thanks for joining us. You're watching OCtV, Oxford Community Television, serving Oxford, Addison Township, and the village of Leonard.